I wonder, have you ever been inside a cave without a light? Have you ever been in a situation where you've been plunged into total, utter darkness? Well, that's the situation I found myself in when I was in my early 20s. A friend of mine was getting married and we had a weekend away just for the guys. Now, as part of that, we did a bunch of activities and one of them was to go caving. Now, we were led by a guide underground into a network of caves. And whilst we were there, we were challenged to a number of tasks. One of which was to stand at the edge of the biggest cave, switch off our lights and try and make our way to a fixed point on the other side of the cave. Needless to say, when the lights were switched off, we were plunged into total and utter darkness. None of us could see where we were or where we were going. Now, after a good 10 minutes of scrabbling around in the dark, we were allowed to switch our lights back on and see how we'd done. Now, to be honest, none of us had done very well. None of us had made it to those fixed points on the side of the wall. In fact, in my situation, I had got so totally lost that when I looked around, I realised, despite moving for a good 10 minutes thinking I was going in the right direction, I was literally a few feet away from where I had begun. Now, the reason we all got so hopelessly lost was that none of us had anything to illuminate the way, nothing to guide us, to direct us or show us the right way to go. Without the light to guide us, there was no clear direction. It's this lack of direction, this lack of something guiding us that Jesus is pointing to when he declares in John chapter 8 verse 12, "I am the light of the world." Now today we're continuing our series looking at the I am statements of Jesus as we find them in the Gospel of John. As the Reverend Joe reminded us at the beginning of this series, the I am part of Jesus' statement is all important. The I am he uses has the same weight as when God spoke to Moses in the desert, something you'll find in Exodus chapter 3. Moses asks a question of God, who has sent him? And God replies, I am who I am. Simply put, God tells Moses that it's God who is sending him. By using the same I am to tell us who he is, Jesus is saying that as the Son of God, he is God. It's beautifully simple and complex all at the same time. But by Jesus using the same I am in his statement here in John chapter 8, he's simply saying, I am God, which the original hearers was totally shocking. We have to remember the original context of where and when Jesus was speaking. Jesus is in the temple courts during the Feast of the Tabernacles, a week-long festival remembering the 40-year journey of the people of Israel, wandering in the desert and the wilderness after their liberation from Egypt. Now, along with the Passover and the Festival of Weeks, the Feast of the Tabernacles is one of 3 great festivals recorded in the Bible when all Jewish males were expected and required to appear before God in the temple courts in Jerusalem. Now, in the evenings during this festival, as it began to get dark, they would light 4 giant bronze bowls in the temple courtyard, the light from which would be seen from miles around. Remember, this is before the advent of the electric light bulb. So when these bowls were lit in the darkness, they illuminated not only the courtyard, but the whole of the city of Jerusalem too. Now, standing on the surrounding hills, they would have become a beacon of light to be seen for miles around. Now, this beacon of light was lit to remind the people of God how he had guided the people of Israel at night during the great journey through the desert. We read in Exodus 13 that the Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so they might travel by day and by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Now the people didn't get lost or confused as to the way to go because they were guided and directed by God. And more importantly, they followed this direction. Now this image of light being a guide became so important that it's reflected in the Psalms and the Proverbs, the early songs of praise and teaching for God's people. Just look at Psalm 27 verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Or what about Psalm 119 verse 105? Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Now this idea of God being a light to guide and rescue was ingrained for the people of Israel. So when Jesus stood up in front of what was the most potent symbol in the most holy place, his words were all the more shocking. When he declares that I am the light of the world, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have light of life. Jesus is declaring that like God being the light to rescue and guide a people out of slavery, here he is to do the same thing. So it's into this context that Jesus speaks. He's declaring himself as God, but more importantly, with the image of light, he's also declaring himself as both rescuer and guide. Jesus declares that he has come to save and show people the right direction and way to live life. But of course, as we see throughout the Gospel of John, the Pharisees are having none of it. They declare to him, "You are testifying on your own behalf. Your testimony is not valid." They want to dismiss Jesus' statement because for them they have this tradition whereby a testimony was only true and right if it could be backed up by another witness. So for them, Jesus standing up and making his declaration, I am the light of the world, simply can't be true as there's no one else there to support his claim. But as Jesus points out, they judge by human standards, not the divine standards they're seeking to uphold. They are missing the whole point of who Jesus is. Jesus is I am. Jesus is God. He doesn't need a witness because of who he is. But then I wonder, are we any different from the Pharisees? Do we judge Jesus with the same human viewpoint and dismiss what he has to say to us today? We don't always want to listen to what Jesus has to say or what it might mean for our lives. Jesus came to be that guiding light in our lives and for our world, showing us that it is through him and only him we can be in relationship with God. But how many times do we reject what Jesus has to say and believe that we know it better, a different direction to take and follow? Certainly our world today, as back then, offers us plenty of paths and directions to take. Now at times I know I've got myself hopelessly lost by not following the guiding light of Jesus. Just like my time in that cave, I stumble through life thinking I know I'm going the right direction, only to discover I'm nowhere near where I or God need me to be. I've gone off and trusted my own direction and even trusted in the direction of others. But none of it has been based out of Jesus as the true light, the one who came to direct, guide and lead us through life. The challenge and my invitation to us all today as we hear Jesus' declaration is to be like the people of Israel who trusted in that great I am as a pillar of light, followed it and allowed it to guide them. Be like them to take this great declaration of Jesus, I am the light of the world. Trust in that too, to be our guiding light in our lives day to day, allowing Jesus to direct our steps as we walk through life, so that we can rest in that promise that those of us who follow Jesus will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Amen.